another 30 seconds probably. Am I audible? Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, can hear you great.
Perfect. A warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. In today's session, we will discuss how you can transform your HR data to enhance recruiting skills and engagement. My name is Ashna and I will be your host for today's session. We will be recording this session and will share it with you post the webinar. Please be sure to type your questions in the question box in your control panel during the session. Our speaker today is Stephen Atkins. Stephen Atkins is SplashHR's Global Analytics Enablement Director and is focused on helping companies improve their insights into their organizational data to drive better business outcomes. With over 20 years of experience in the HCM space, Stephen has presented at numerous events over the years, including Gartner, People Analytics World, CIPD, HRSE Middle East, ATD Middle East, CIPD People Analytics Conference, and Learning Technologies. Moving on to a quick introduction to Ensan Technologies. Ensan Technologies is a boutique HR technology company with headquarters in Dubai and offices across GCC. We provide solutions in 5 areas within the HR technology domain, mainly operational HR management, strategic HR management, talent acquisition, learning and development, and HR transformation. Ensan represents many of the leading and innovative global HR technology vendors in the region. We sell, implement, and support the solutions in the region. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Stephen. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Ashna. Welcome, everyone. And just to give you a quick glimpse of me again, that's me in the bottom right there. And it's strange today because we're not having audio, so at least you don't get to see me in real time, which is probably a blessing in disguise. And really, from a point of view is, our intent today to share some of our experiences and hopefully have a bit of information sharing, a bit of fun, maybe, I don't know. But it's good webinars, hopefully have some good questions and participation from you guys. So I encourage you to use the chat, right? So please, and challenge our assumptions, right? Because you're hearing some information today, which I'd love to get your experiences on. And if you do have an experience, that'd be great to help for everyone. So really, that's a little bit about us. And really, when we talk about SplashHR, if you don't know who we are, then we actually help a lot of people with their data. From a point of view is that we really want to give you insights into your people data to give you a true people analytics capability. And the main thing around that is the big switch now is aligning that information with the goals of your businesses. And that really is a business driver to get better outcomes from your data and align with the business. And really, if I was to simplify that into a picture, just think about it joining the dots. So around SplashHR, you can have many different areas of information related to your talent ecosystem. From your multiple data sources, I'm sure people have got data all over the place in different platforms, in different core systems, in different talent systems. And then from there, people really love to get to the far right on this dot here, which is predictions. We want to predict everything. But if you don't do all the mini bits in the middle and you can't connect the dots, then what's the point? And SplashHR really allows you to connect the dots to get more meaningful insights into your capabilities. So really, that's a little bit about us. So I won't go on about how many people we have and how many offices we have. But really, from that point of view is today's point is really talking about HR transformation and the part that data can play in that, and then how that aligns back to certain things. And really, from a point of view, there is a mini bit of audience participation. I think we got a first poll here. So before we go into this, it'd be great to understand if you can share this information. If not, it's fine. Where would you say your organization is in its journey with data transformation? So you might be on your journey, maybe you're just starting out, maybe you're doing it fantastically, or maybe you just don't know. So it's kind of interesting to get that point. We'll ask us now, we'll ask in effect the same question at the end once we've gone through some of these pieces, because if you're not aware of it, it might be happening anyway. So we'll give it a couple of seconds and please, please, please feel free to respond. It's not going to bite you, hopefully. But from that point of view, it'd be great to get some information from you. How are we doing, Ashna? Cool. Was that done? Oh, excellent. So we got some responses, a few responses. So there's one, 70%, one saying we're progressing nicely. But anyway, it sounds like some of the journey is just about to start, which is kind of good, or there's a couple of don't knows in there as well. So that's brilliant to understand. Thanks for that. And thanks for responding. I do appreciate that. I know that sometimes it's a bit of another poll, another survey. So really, when we talk about these sort of things, I'd just like to get back to HR transformation, right? So from a point of view, I kind of get it, where do we start a journey? Which sounds like we're kind of a couple of people here on that. And really, from a point of view is, how do we actually get from transactional to strategic? It can seem daunting, right? And I think as people go through these journeys with the transactional parts of HR through to strategic, teams kind of still get stuck with that transactional stuff, right? So the top job of the HR professional is dealing with technical and administrative aspects of personnel management. But we also know that HR is firmly recognized as a strategic part of the business, right? So really there is a shift from a lot of organizations making that transactional HR shift to strategic HR shift. But it is a journey, right? And around this whole journey, there's a whole skill and mindset around that, and potentially the willingness to adapt. But where do you start, right? And I would always say when you start any type of journey, it makes sense to have some kind of objective, right? But then it's understanding what that objective possibly could be. Is it related to business growth, for example? Is it reduced to reducing turnover? Is it into improve recruitment? Some of those metrics are great to align back to the business, because it's good to have a goal as you go through HR transformation. And I think really some of the simple things you can do when you kind of move away from that transactional piece into strategic HR capabilities is really maybe doing some really basic things around your HR platforms, right? So maybe moving towards that self-service process. A lot of people are doing that, right? A lot of people doing it around holiday requests, employee records, for example. And from an HR point of view, if you can choose something that helps you automate most basic processes, payroll, document sharing, and things like that, that's part of that journey on there. But more importantly, I think it's really aligning those business goals with people's strategies, right? So as I mentioned before, having an objective where you're going on. I think really, as we become more strategic, you start thinking further down the line, right? So you move from those short-term thinking elements and you maybe start thinking a couple of steps ahead, right? And then that will allow you to align HR with your business's bigger strategy, right? And the final thing there is really reporting on meaningful workforce metrics, right? So statistics matter, but which ones really matter at the outset of my journey, and which metrics should be measured? For example, as we move to this data point of view around people, what's the cost of hire, for example? Can we measure turnover? Can we see the impact of absence? Is there job satisfaction and engagement stuff going on, or even measuring performance? All of those pieces can be measured in meaningful ways, but that's when you start really going from your transactional piece into more strategic HR. So hopefully that doesn't sound too daunting, and if you're on those journeys, it should make sense. And if you're starting out, then hopefully that gives you some insights into that capability. But as we go on those particular journeys is, well, what part does data play in all of this, right? So as I mentioned before, most people will have at least 5+ areas where they might have people data in. And traditionally, I think at the last report I read was between 8 and 12 systems, where you might have your core HR, you might have those transactional pieces around your talent pieces, you might have some other pieces in engagement. So we're always adding data to the area. And I talk about it, is that really the final frontier? And that's the start of your journey. And I think really data is key, right? So I think, but when we go around that data point is, how do we get the alignment of HR with what the C-suite is after? And from that point of view, there really needs to be a better story with how your data is produced and how it's presented to affect their decision making, because we want to align this back to the business. And when we do these things, I talk about data, the final frontier. A lot of people do get worried about this around data quality, being able to understand new sources, being able to cleanse and to validate data, really. But that's kind of part of where we can help you do those particular things and make sense of that. And as you go on this journey, as you become less isolated from an HR perspective, and you are aligned back to the C-suite, we find that actually being able to report on HR capabilities becomes more of a currency of languages. of a language, because I don't know what organizations all of you are from, but I'm sure there's a myriad of industries that we're here. But whatever you're in, I'm sure there's some precedence in data within your organizations, for example, in CRM, right? Or if you're in manufacturing, in supply chain, for example. But there's people are doing certain parts of data, and HR is kind of the lagging piece. But as you go on this journey and you want to cross the chasm and you're kind of working out the operating model, selling the story can be one of the most important pieces, because understanding that it is a story that you're displaying with the information you're showing is important. So simple ROI statements, right? But how do you measure those, right? So I think really this is the key to getting stakeholder alignment and buy-in as you go on your journey. And I think really one of the most important parts of getting successful data-driven outcomes is understanding why the business wants data, right? So if you can help your HR teams plan for better data capture and better understand what it will inform, then really that allows you to go on that particular journey. And I think really the main thing then is that you can, data capture can be used in your processes that can transform or better connect your people practices. So that's a little bit about crossing the chasm. And I mentioned before also, you know, as you go through the we're talking about HR data, you know, but how mature are you when you can report on your data as organizational pieces? We speak to a lot of people where maybe they got organizational level reporting existing, but it's kind of basic, right? We can get some pieces in silos of information. You might be able to track KPIs, right? So a lot of people go down the headcount route, right? But from there, and it kind of goes, okay, can we get an accurate number of a head count? But then I'd love to see the turnover pieces. So maybe you can get some data around that. Absence, not everyone tracks that in the same way. We're seeing a big shift towards D, E, and I around those things. And they kind of had standard definitions that you should be able to track. But a lot of people are still doing this in a very labor intensive way, right? So a lot of people are still using Excel, which isn't a problem in itself, because Microsoft is probably one of the biggest HR reporting tools all over the place, right? But is Excel a way of displaying and showing a story? Probably not. And when you do those particular things, you got to manage multiple spreadsheets. Maybe you got to do some things around merging stuff. You maybe get broken formulas. There's a to and fro in between, which is the right data, the wrong data, the up-to-date data. And maybe you do this on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, whatever. But by the time you get to a certain point, it's finished and you have to restart those cycles. So really, that's part of the transactional and the transformation HR data journey, that you move away from some of these timely ways of managing the data and the outputs to make it more easy. And this is where we kind of come in. And this can look pretty busy, right, this slide. But if I was to just sort of drive or draw your attention to top left, the data sources, right? Data sits in a lot of different places, right? And as you go on this journey, people kind of think about that, but who owns that? Who owns the getting the data from those places? You probably have to involve your IT teams and maybe some other strategic teams in the organization. And then we switch to bottom right. Now we want to get the presentation, right? We want to, in effect, report better. That's probably the first step. We want to do this in some pretty cool ways, right? So maybe to more of a web place, maybe put it into some existing tools, for example, but have some dashboards that can do those things. But as you go on this journey to do this more consistently, to move away from that transactional type of reporting to become more strategic, these are things to consider. So from data pipelines, from getting the data into something usable, to understanding where you're going to store that information and schemas, having a data model that's fit for purpose around the HR capabilities, and also being able to have the security around that is part of your journey. So we can help, as you can probably see some high level statistics here, but the main thing is it's kind of really a progression to becoming more of a mature people analytics capability, right? And it isn't just the data on the dashboards, but now you're moving it to drive a strategy to get some more advanced statistical modeling, as well as storytelling. And I think really the storytelling piece is the true end goal of any people analytics capability. And just because you got dashboards, you haven't probably solved the bigger problem. It's a good first step. And I think really when you go into dashboards capability, it only gives you that face value data, right? And the story, therefore, storytelling is key around that. And I think this is where HR becomes invested in convincing others around what the data story is telling them, right? So this is kind of an insight piece, right? So we know that from everyone we engage with, that the first step is overcoming that struggle with reporting, right? We mentioned that before, from those multiple sources, not having a consistent source of truth, right? We have multiple areas. What's the latest up-to-date data that we can rely on? Or the means to output and distribute that information, right? So can we automate those processes? Can we make it more of a self-service approach? And I'd also touch upon overcoming those silos, right? So I'm sure people can report on their performance tools, for example, maybe some of their learning statistics. Maybe you can do some insights into recruitment, but bringing that together can be quite burdensome. Okay, so really when you go on these particular things, well, what do we want to measure? And I would say meaningful workforce metrics are a great start. So figuring out which statistics matter to your business and which metrics should be measured, right? As I mentioned before, the cost of hire, can we figure out that? What's the cost of the business if we don't recruit for a particular role? What's that going to do to our productivity? What's turnover happening in the business? Can we measure absence? Post-COVID, a lot of people are thinking around what's absence and turnover. We want to have a better engaged team, but as we move to hybrid, how can we measure those capabilities? What's job satisfaction? How are we measuring performance or productivity? So those are some things that we really want to go on. And then really, we talk about lagging and leading indicators. And I think really just to give you an idea, so traditionally, the historical stuff is kind of understanding the lagging pieces, right? So that's kind of reporting on what you've already achieved without being able to have the trend information, right? So can we report on that over time? Can we see those trends? It's hard to see where you might be going, right? And I think really the big thing that HR really automatically want to do is be in the predictive phase. But you can't be predictive without having to tackle the historical part first. There is no silver bullet. And here's just a quick piece, right? We mentioned those Excel pieces before. Bottom image is a spreadsheet, right? But sometimes it's valuable. But how do we make that tell a story? How do we bring that to life? And you can see as you go on that data-driven journey of having the dashboards and the capabilities to tell the story, you can see some of the things that we can bring to life. And you can start measuring these things your way to get better. So really, I'll pause for 2 seconds and just push it back out to Ashna to say, I think we're okay for time, and now we're going to go into the nitty-gritty around things. But are there any high-level questions so far that we want to do? No, I don't think we're ready for poll 2 yet. Let's figure that one out. Close that one if you can. But really, are there any particular questions that I need to be aware of, or I'm just going to move on, Ashna? Give me a quick audio.
Not yet.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Well, I hope everyone's still there. Fantastic. I was going to say jump up and down and move around your desk and wave your hands in the air. So now we're going to go into another bit, another segue. So really, how does this really import, recruiting's on the spotlight, knowing that, understanding skills in organizations, critical, and engagement. So how do these pieces affect that together? So when we measure those things, recruitment, skills, and engagement, we're seeing those as strategic trends for 2022 and beyond. And I think these are big business drivers, which are never more so under the spotlight now. And if we measure these things in isolation, fantastic. But everything that we feel is interlinked and intertwined here. Just remember, interlinked and intertwined, from recruitment through to skills, through engagement, which throws back out to, if we have a disengage, we might be losing people. We need to go back to recruitment, looking for the skills. We want to engage those people. And I think in isolation, everything is intrinsically linked, right? And each of these will impact your businesses positively or potentially negatively. So if you can just improve anything in isolation, one of these steps, that's going to bring benefits. If you can tie that all together, it will bring even bigger impacts. And we saw those dots before. And really, we want to help you connect those dots in your business to bring it back to making more strategic business outcomes. So let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Right? So I don't know how many people are related to recruiting, how many people are, but I'm sure everyone here is aware of the importance of getting the best candidates for your business, supporting your business brand, and doing those particular things. But oftentimes it becomes quite an arduous piece. Recruiting can be in isolation to the rest of the business and HR. And we've seen a big trend around people leaving businesses over the past 2 years, right? Everyone talks about the great resignation. Maybe I don't want to bring up too many things, but maybe people see different areas they can go to. If you're fortunate enough to be in certain type of roles, you maybe have a bit more freedom to do what you want to. But recruiting is always under the spotlight, but never more so now. And as you prepare for growth or realignment of your businesses, it's really greatly helped where you can make sense of the data in your tools, for example. So most people have some form of ATS, but when we're doing this, it's best to understand your the best candidate fit with your business, right? It supports your brand. And as you do that, and the brand means the business, right? Can we understand our sourcing, right? So where the best people coming from, who are making the biggest impacts in the business, right? So oftentimes we can understand people, we can see the number of requisitions, but can we actually measure the impact on the business? As we go into that, and from recruiting, there's a handoff into understand where people go in the business. So tenure, so how long do people stay with our businesses? Do we see any type of drop off over certain periods of time? And remember, we talk about intrinsically linked and intertwined. Maybe tenure could have a bit around being disengaged people, right? Do we know where are disengaged people? Because maybe we've done a good onboarding, but between years 1 and 2, we don't really do much, and therefore people disengage. Maybe we can see a trend about people leaving. Skills, right? So skill gaps and needs are important for you. You know, what are we looking for? You know, and actually, as we move to that skill-based hiring capability, it really lends to that internal mobility conversation as well. And if we can figure out the candidates and where they're coming from, it allows us to understand who are the best ones to succeed. So I would say always know who you're looking for, right? The business comes to you, we need a recruitment, we need it, but let's be flexible, right? Because your data can help you uncover meaningful insights and potentially discover those roadblocks preventing you achieving those things. But if you can't say back to the business, okay, as we're preparing for growth in this particular business area, we need, and they can say to you, we need to increase our engineering by 10%, for example. And 10% means, okay, that's say 20 jobs that we need to look for. But if we can't measure out how long it takes us to recruit for that particular job in the first place, and we know that it's going to take over 3 months to find the right person, if you can't tell the business that and they're expecting you to fill those roles within the next 2 weeks, you're in a bit of a problem. So having the data really allows you to plan better around that. And also potentially in the data, you know, is there any bias maybe around age, gender, ethnicity as well? You know, is it affecting our candidate pipeline? So all those sort of things, you can sort of understand why it's really important to get better grips around your recruiting capabilities, to be able to take that back to the business, to understand where you're doing well and where you might need to strategically do better, and plan, more importantly, to say, as we prepare for growth or downsizing, this is how it's going to affect us moving forward. And I think really the bigger thing here is if we look for skills and you're using external resources, are there any trends around those sort of people that are providing those roles to you? Because then it allows you to make better business decisions to say, actually, from recruiter A, we're getting a higher quality candidate, they're staying with us longer. So let's go with those people because they seem to have a better fit for that particular role. So I think those are some of the areas, and bottom right, you can start seeing how we can bring some of those lights together. You know, around recruiting, there's always those things around inputs and outputs and throughputs and bottlenecks. And really, when we get to the grips with the data, it will really allow you to see those improving the insights and actually have a better discussion around your evidence that you're presenting back to the business. And around that, closely aligned to that, right, is the skills. And as we bring people on and as we start measuring these particular things, skills is really critical to the growth of our business. But really, do we understand our core strengths? You know, what do we need to improve or succeed moving forward? And really, can we actually measure the skills? And I would always say this is a big discussion in my 20 years in HR, right? People always talk about skills and competency, but oftentimes there isn't really any framework in place. But the great thing is we're moving towards more of that ad hoc skill capability. We're moving away from the traditional development capabilities. If you learn this, you'll get a certain skill level. But now we're doing more things in the flow of work. But let's see how we can actually start measuring those capabilities. And I think as you move to skills, it's really important if you can start benchmarking that data against your current business needs, right? And from there, remember we spoke about that HR data transformation, preparing for the short term, mid-term, long term, or that's 3 steps ahead. Skills really allow you to do that, you know, your short term, your medium term, and your long term capabilities. And I think they've got some critical questions to ask if you start seeing these things. You know, how will our employees' core responsibilities change in certain roles? You know, what technologies do they need to know? What are the areas, what other areas of the business can they contribute to with the key skills they have? Because that could be a critical thing to have in that engagement, understanding things around career progression and having people staying with you a little bit longer. And I think having this bigger picture of where your people stand in their critical roles and they stand in the skills, or even a holistic view across your whole organization, and seeing what that means to how that could impact your future capabilities, it's really important for HR to keep on top of that with the data at their fingertips. A statistic for you, there's a company called Insight 222. They did a study of the top global companies across the globe. And their wish was to find 90% wanted to use a skill-based workforce planning capability, but only 26, less than a quarter, already doing so. So again, if you're not doing this, you're not alone. If you're trying to do this, it's part of a journey. But really, as you do these things, I think, as you focus on skills, it allows you to be more transparent how things are going across the business, and it creates a standard expectation of what it takes to be successful in a role. And that aligns back with the things you're recruiting for as you go back to recruiting, right? Your requisitions, what you're looking for. Transparency will give you what can be learned or developed to perform a role well, right? So what are the barriers in place for me succeeding? And actually, this really opens up opportunities for a redeployment from one role to another based on a set of common expectations, which hopefully are developable as well. Understanding or establishing flexibility, to see how your role requirements are changing, because adaptation and agility are things that have been forced upon us ever more so as a result of the pandemic. And really allows you to get a more understandable target where your employees can go in your business. Because actually, this really aligns with that internal mobility discussion, right? So where we can see like for like, right, or even similar skills side by side, means that we can do a better job at career pathing as an individual level. As an employee, maybe I can look for things, but as an HR perspective, where are the people that we can go to plug gaps in our business as we grow, right? Because now we can start seeing these are ones that maybe we can have a great discussion around them, which will probably have a great impact on your retention. So drive down attrition, right? Increase retention, drive down attrition, which is probably great. And the visibility into that means that we can say, okay, we can have better discussions with our people. And actually that builds the other side of that, where you support your brand. It probably brings better, having those discussions around and being more transparent and visible will bring greater trust and resilience moving forward from your work teams, right? So, which will actually have a massive impact on your recruiting initiatives, which allows your recruiting teams to be more strategic in their efforts, right? In attracting candidates into other roles or new roles that you don't have those skills for. So you can see now that we're talking about that everything is pretty much interlinked. And the final piece today is just really around that employee engagement. So I'm sure a lot of you have been tasked with or trying to do or have adopted a new survey tool or some way of measuring engagement across the business, right? Especially as we move to hybrid, especially as we become more disconnected. But what are the aspirations of workforces? And I think the flip side of that is HR says, great, we've got another tool, we can start hitting people. And I don't know how many people have been sort of weary of too many surveys coming away. Does it really impact my life? What does it really matter? Why do they want this information? So you've got to figure out how to be strategic around these things, but really, how do you measure the impact of your employee engagement, right? And I would say really, as you do these things, the main thing that you really want to measure is your employee sentiment, right? So what are your employees feeling? What's the sentiment across the business? Otherwise you're at risk of missing problems. Surveys generally are infrequent, probably unwieldy, and maybe not focused on how people are feeling right now, right? And as you go through those pieces, actually, if we do a survey, how long does it take to understand data, right? So maybe if you have an issue, you've got something wrong with your knee, you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you need to have this, and but you walk out with nothing happening. Sometimes you get the disconnect between action and the sentiment of how you're feeling. We want to figure out what I need to do today to fix the problem in my knee. But most people, when we engage those people, remember, we've gone through the recruiting piece, right? We now understand the skills in the business. But as we engage with organizations, and as remembering it's all about our people, fundamentally, people really want to feel valued in their roles, right? They want to feel accepted in their jobs, and they want to have fulfilled work life, right? That's the main thing. So valued, accepted, and fulfilled are things that we're trying to help our people, the people emotions of why people come to work for an organization. But from there is like, well, can we see the trends in certain job groups? Can we see the trends in areas or managers? And I think really, if you were to do this right, my advice to you is making sure that you have something that's kind of always on, right? So anyone who's fortunate enough to have traveled recently or gone to any stores, sometimes you leave and they said, how do you feel about your customer service day? And you press the red, green, yellow button. And I think sometimes it's even simplifying your engagement down to those levels, but really ensure your data's in line to the people, right? And I think really once you're recruited for those roles that you want, the critical roles to grow the business, engagement through sentiment analysis can have a positive impact. Right? It can make people feel different about work, can make them feel excited, engaged, inspired. So if you can combine the engagement information, for example, where the trend's up, who's trending down, for example, with your other data, right? Potentially absence. That could be an interesting one, right? Absent hotspots. And then combine that with other data, productivity, for example. It provides more comprehensive view beyond just the sentiment. And I think really it allows your HR teams to be more proactive in getting to grips with potential issues. And as we move to more flexibility in our work lives, right? Well, those of us lucky enough to be in roles allow that, I must stress, and the policies from companies themselves. The bottom line is that we increase the likelihood of retaining teams and improving our employee well-being, which, bringing this full circle, right? Remember we started off recruiting, we can then focus on our recruiting efforts accordingly and move from, in effect, putting out fires, i.e. we have this problem, let's go, we need to do something real quick, but it's not scalable, to becoming more strategic in our strategy. And if you remember, moving from that HR transactional piece to becoming more HR strategic is part of this journey. But underneath all of these particular things are those data-driven journeys, the data information pieces, and making sense of it to be able to report back to the business and affect those business outcomes. So those are my high-level points, right? We're coming to the end, right? I know we're scheduled for an hour. I'm not going to take up all your time today, but really, let's maybe have a quick understanding around the takeaways. And I think maybe now is the time for a quick poll. Again, the second poll, Ashna, just to come up. We've spoken about HR transformation. We've spoken a little bit about the data playing in all of this. And maybe the same question, Ashna, if we could have poll 2, if you're allowed to share that. If we can't, let me know.
That. 1 second. Yeah,
so I think really from that point of view is, understanding that, are you a little bit more comfortable understanding it's your organization with data transformation? Love to see if anything that has been discussed so far, or sorry, anything that I've said so far has resonated with you, because, I would love to get back to some of the questions after as well. So we'll leave this open for a couple of seconds. If you're still there, love to get your insights. But really, how comfortable are you at having these discussions now in the organization? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ashna, maybe we just close it and see what happens.
Yes.
Wow, we had a few more responses. Fantastic. So we're still kind of a little bit at the top. We've got a few progressing nicely. Brilliant. I'm glad for that. But even then is, what are you doing well and how can you improve those things and get back to the business as well? So that's great. So thank you for that. And then really from a point of view, as we move into the key takeaways, and this is, I can talk about how great we do a job because we can bring all that data for you. We can automate a lot of the processes. We can give you the outputs around that sort of thing. But a lot of people, when we engage with them, these are some of the things that they fed back to us about the high level pieces, right? From an HR perspective and understanding what it is. So step 1 is get a clear, to go on a journey, right? We spoke about this right at the top, but you need a start and you need a destination. The destination can change, but having an idea how to get there is always a great way. And being able to be agile enough to re-change direction along that journey is also important. But I think first and foremost is be clear and honest where you are today, right? I think understanding the impact of what your data means to the business. You maybe you don't know the impact. It's good to have those discussions. How can we do to make things better? How can we do things to make improve those particular areas? How can we have a better data-driven conversation? Because if you need to move from just having Excel outputs to getting better storytelling, that's a great understanding of where you want to start from and where you need to get to. So understanding where you are today first is a good piece, right? And getting the conversation, the feedback from your teams around, and what do we need to achieve? How do we need to improve it? Which is really important to get your stakeholder alignment and buy-in. The second one that we get also from people is, as you go on this journey, a lot of people are really concerned about the data, the quantity of data, the validity of that data, the ability to get to data, right? And everyone that we speak to has those concerns. Maybe it's not as good as we expected, but if you don't understand that, if you can't start on that journey, you'll never be able to improve some of those areas. And that's where we can help in, right? Starting that journey is really going to help you move on that. So data concern, yes, it's the number one topic from a lot of people, but actually the most successful people start on that journey regardless and make those improvements back to the business as they move on. So we're not individually accountable here, right? This is a business we're working for, but we can make some fantastic improvements back to the business. And the other key takeaway as you go on these sort of things is, okay, you might invest in something, or IT, you might go to IT and say, look, we want better reporting. It's taken us too long. And they say, well, actually, we got something like Tableau or Power BI in place. And actually, from our point of view, that's fantastic because we could really help with that. And one of the big wins from an organization that we're working, which is 270,000 people globally, is that we help them leverage their existing infrastructure, right? So they do report consistently through Tableau, but the data we can present to them from all the stuff in the data model we can do with all the security around it can be leveraged from SplashHR. So the main thing is suddenly IT were invested with going on that journey because in effect the overhead, the ROI was a lot less or reduced and the impact a lot greater because we could also leverage their existing infrastructure. So those are some key takeaways, which is moving away from some of the pieces that we've spoken about. But this is a great piece for you to understand. When you go and have these discussions, think about these particular areas. And then really, the last piece, as we move to being that people analytics organization, we are, or SplashHR, we're a people analytics company. And you've got to understand that's our vision, that's driving our strategy for you. And it's affecting our business and our brand to make you better at doing those particular things. And I think really our strategy is to deliver a fully connected environment where people analytics is locked in to what your organizations want to accomplish, right? And what is your vision for your business success? And I think really, as we move through this cycle here, it's like you can connect those dots, right? Connecting with analytics drives your business performance. So you get a more holistic view of your hiring processes or any people processes, right? Where are we struggling? What do we need to improve? What's the evidence behind the information that we're showing? What's the story that we're telling? And once you get those insights, it allows you to make better informed decisions, right? We spoke about a little bit about agility. How do we improve moving forward? How do we get quicker at hiring for those best people? What are the skills we need to do to improve and grow the business? Because we're moving to evidence, right? And again, as you present this evidence, don't take it personally. This is business data, which is back to the information of the business, right? You align in those outcomes. And then you can start tracking those KPIs and you can track those and keep on track, right? Remember those trends over time, we saw these particular things. We saw the best time to fills, finding the best sources, which really allows your capabilities, if you have a data team for you, or understand it from an HR perspective, you spend less time data wrangling from all those different sources because now you can automate that information, you have a consistent source of truth, and you can actually get more instant insights into those things, which allows you to be more consistent in your outputs, and you can sort of move from working from hunches and connecting back to the business performance. And it's a never-ending cycle, right? So these are some of the key pieces that you'll want to start measuring as you move forward. And just one last piece for today, right? Remember that every time you do these things, can you actually quantify the business impact? The return on investment, for example. And we have spoken a little about recruitment, but if you can measure certain things like, okay, for every percentage decrease in our time to fill, i.e. we can fill something a little bit quicker, right? We move from being 3 weeks down to 2 weeks or 3 months down to 2 months. And for every percentage decrease in that time to fill, we gain another percentage gain of productivity, fantastic, and reduce our recruitment costs by Y. Right, so now you've got some meaningful metrics around just your recruitment data. We can see that we're reducing the time to fill, fantastic. We can now measure the output, the productivity of those people in those areas, and there's a direct alignment back to recruitment costs. So some of those measurables are there and ready to use in our pre-built capabilities that we can bring to you in our charts and our dashboards. So really, that's it, right? I've spoken a lot. I'd love to see if there's any particular questions that we can align to. Feel free to connect with me, right? If you want to have this discussion online, that's fantastic, or speak to our fantastic colleagues at MSAN, who are our business partner in region. You know, we have a lot of experience in doing these things. We know you're on a journey. We do have a capability of helping you understand this and even allow you to have a better conversation back to your business. So speak to us. We'd love to speak to you afterwards. I'm sure you'll be hearing us anyway. But in the meantime, you know, feel free to reach out. You can see my email and my LinkedIn piece as well. So Ashna, that's me done. We got back to 45 minutes. We've got a few minutes left. And if not, we don't have to fill it with questions. But are there any particular questions that people are asking?
Yes, we do have a few questions. Thank you, Stephen, first of all, for such an informative session. Let me just go ahead and take the first question, which is why wouldn't someone use a regular BI application like Power BI or Click as opposed to Splash BI?
Yes, and I think that's a really good point, Aminush. And I don't know what part of the organization you're from, whether you're from HR or maybe from the IT perspective, but a lot of people go down this route. A lot of people need to improve some of their processes and automating the outputs, right? And also better security around all the things you're sharing, right? And I think really the capability around Power BI or Click or even Tableau, you know, you make a great point. And if you did go to your IT teams and said, look, we are struggling around this area, they'd probably say to you, you need to we use the tools we have. But, and this is a big but, the time it takes to do those outputs, the time it takes to have a regular source of information, the time it takes to have a regular fit for purpose data model and a trusted source that you can repeat those processes is one of the biggest disconnects, which is why people maybe go down that route, but then come back to us to say, actually, it's taken a lot of time. We're still not getting the return. We're still doing a lot of data wrangling. And by the way, it does take us quite a long time to create the output we want, the stories, the charts, or the visuals in those capabilities. And that's where I say, from our point of view, as you saw there, leveraging your existing IT strategy is a great win for you. Yes, we can do those things. We can make sense of your data and we can output it to those tools to make a quicker use. So hopefully that answered that particular questions. I think I do actually now see the questions, Ashna. So there's another question around, would I have challenges to integrate with any data tools? There's lots of data tools out there in different file formats. Do I also need an ETL tool? And another great question, and I think really, and we saw those dots right at the beginning, all those different areas. And that's one of the biggest disconnects, right? So even reporting in isolation from any individual area in that piece is problematic, right? Can we actually get the right reports at the right time with our data, right? Remember, all of this is your business data. So anyone who charges you to get to that information, anyone, I think that's a big con and ripoff, to be honest, please, to be frankly. It's your data, you should be able to do what you want with it. And really, when you move to something like us, we can connect to multiple sources, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, on-premise, off-premise, through cloud connectors. We have pre-packaged connectors, we have a REST API, we can even get flat file formats as well. So some of that stuff could be in Excels or whatever formats you have. So we can connect to multiple outputs or multiple sources, whether it be on-premise, off-premise, cloud, non-cloud, data file or non-data format, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And from an ETL point of view, yes, we help you do that heavy lifting around those processes. So part of that piece is we understand where your data is coming from. We can integrate with multiple areas, and then we bring it into our data model. Part of that, we can do the ETL, the extract, transformation, transform, and load piece, and also help you with some of the data validity areas around that. So hopefully you answer that. We connect to multiple sources. We can start making sense of it with our ready-to-use data model, and also give you the output into something, right? I.e. our pre-built capabilities around those dashboards. But I'd also say everything is owned by you. You can control, you can change the metrics in there. We give you a load of things out of the box, but if you need to start measuring things your way, you can do so. If you need to create different charts or dashboards, you can do so. If you need to lock it down to certain people in the organization, you can do so. If you need to distribute that on a regular basis to people, you can do so. If you want to move to self-service, yes, you can. And those are the big wins for a lot of organizations, being able to have a single source of information and being able to output on regularly across the whole business, which then affects everyone being better with aligning with the business outcomes. So, and the last question I see here is, if I have huge volumes of data, do I need to get more organized with a data warehouse of some sort? So, depending where you are in your organizational capability, some of you might already have people trying to build data warehouses. Some people might already have a data warehouse, but I'd also say, you know, has HR played a part in that? And is all your HR data in there? And I know that a lot of times when we speak to people, yes, people are going down to a data warehouse because they have lots and lots of different data. Yes, we're getting some of the data in, but not all of that. And yes, we'd like you to help with that. So just to paint a quick picture, whether it comes into us directly into our data model, that's one thing. Whether it's going into your data warehouse and into us, that's fantastic. We can sit pretty much alongside those capabilities. Or if you need to enhance your data warehouse capability, i.e. not all the data is going into there, that can come into us as well. And then we can make sense of both those outputs and bring it back out there. So hopefully that answers those specific questions, because they're fantastic questions around leveraging your existing strategy, making some of the data transformation journey pieces, and understanding where your data might be stored, right? So that's another thing. But fundamentally, we can help with all those particular pieces. We do the heavy lifting to make your data journey a lot easier, and then making sure that your teams can report on things a lot better. So hopefully that answers those questions. I think that really is great. Great questions. Thanks for asking. Any other questions? But I trust this all makes sense. Anything else, Ashna, or are we good to wrap up?
I think we're good to wrap up unless you want to cover something else.
No, I think from my point of view, that's great. Let's give some time back to everyone. I really, 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 really appreciate everyone's time on this. I really appreciate everyone sort of spending time with us and answering particular things. The main thing is you're on a journey. There's no right way or wrong way to do this. The big thing is, I know we can help, right? So we have been down this. We can give you some of the answers you want to. And just for informal discussions, love to carry this on. Someone's already connected to me on LinkedIn, so I'm happy to see that. So please, 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 you know, feel free to connect with us. And, you know, we're here to help. And we're making unraveling a lot of the sense of all of that stuff in the data-driven journey. But really, I do appreciate feedback today. This will be recorded, I believe, so there will be a link that you can play it back and give it out to your other teams. But yes, thank you, Ashna. Thank you, Ansan, for hosting this. Thank you for doing a great job, and thank you everyone for just playing along and listening to me today. And as you can tell, I get pretty passionate about this, and we want you to be passionate about this too. So that's it from me. Ashna, back to you to wrap up, and then we
Great,
can all go.
thank you, Steve. Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for being here today, and we look forward to having you on our webinars in the future. And we'll have the recording out in the next 24 hours in your inbox. So watch out for that. And yes, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic day or rest of the day, and speak to you soon.